Last but not least in the power rankings is North America, a region hot off the success of Nightmare beating Crazy Raccoon at the Hangzhou Major. I know we've talked about it a lot, but it bears repeating. What a result for the region, filling all of the West with hope, and we can finally stop these Koreans and win a tournament one day. They've also gone through a decent amount of roster moves and maybe even more org changes. So it's all a little bit confusing in North America, but I'll explain everything that we know so far. And there's going to be a few gaps and everything, so we'll have to make some assumptions. But the announcement should come over the next few days. But I thought I need to get this video out before the season starts. Otherwise, I'm kind of cheating, right? If some of the matches happen, then I do my power rankings. So we'll get straight into it. We'll look at these Stage 2 rosters, which means it's time for the spreadsheet. As always, the teams on the left here are in the order they finished. Obviously, we'll talk about the names in a second, but we've got the tanks in green, the DPS in pink, and the supports in blue. And as you might notice, there's a couple of gaps here where the players haven't been announced yet, so we won't be able to talk about them fully, but I know what the rosters are and I've taken them into account in my power rankings, so I've got no cope for my power rankings. I'm working with a full deck of cards, even if they've not all been fully announced yet. The first thing to talk about is probably all of the org changes so everyone knows what is going on. So let's start with the easy one. Avidity are now called Extinction. Same team, same core roster, a new player in Hattori that we'll talk about later, but it's the same roster. They're just called Extinction now. Elsewhere, the Nightmare team that beat Crazy Raccoon are now, at time of recording, orgless. They've had a lot of interest, and I'm sure they'll sign something soon. There'll be a big, exciting announcement. So, in the meantime, they are Dennis and the Burgers, named after their inspirational hit scan, Lethal. Nightmare, the organisation this is, have then picked up the Rad roster from Stage 1. Couple of changes there that we'll talk about too, but they are the new Nightmare, is probably the easiest thing to call them. Meanwhile, Rad, after losing their roster to Nightmare, have then picked up what was the core of the Timeless roster, so which is now called Rad Esports, who are still yet to announce a lot of their players. That again we'll get to when we get to it. So hopefully that all makes sense. Obviously there's a few other roster moves mixed in there as well, and we'll hit all the teams as we go through them. But let's start ranking some teams, why not? And we're going to start at the bottom as we always do. And unfortunately, like in the other regions, the teams at the bottom are very likely to be some of the newly promoted teams, and in 8th spot, I'm going to have to put the Dill Ducks. Always tough for the newly promoted teams. You come into a bigger region, full salary teams, higher talent per player, everything gets harder. So while Dill Ducks should be very happy that they made it this far and that they qualified out of promotion relegation after finishing 1 and Face It Masters, everything like that, this is going to be really tough for them. And honestly, after all of the power rankings I did last year when we had that big group stage and 24 odd teams and I was having to go really into the depths of my Overwatch knowledge to find all the players, I thought as we went down to 8 teams, it would be the last time I'd be saying the name Frothy Philly 7 in a power rankings, but Frothy Philly 7 can't be kept down. The Philly just won't stop frothing. They're back with the Dill Ducks for OWCS Stage 2 in North America. So while my vision is clouded by a lot of this froth, it's not blinded me to the difficulties that Dill Ducks are going to face in this stage. It's going to be really hard for them, and worse too, the other promoted team, which you'd expect them maybe to go in toe-to-toe with, is Supernova, who actually, we'll talk about more in a bit, but they're the fluffy Dreamland core from last year, and that did super well, and if anything, it was a shock when they didn't qualify for Stage 1. So the level of competition in this sort of bottom half of North America is going to be pretty fierce, I think, and I worry the Dill Ducks are going to get left behind in all of it. Struggle for series wins, struggle for map wins, all of that. Which means they're not only at the bottom, I think I'm actually going to have to do our first tier break already and put the Ducks in a tier of their own, the Duck tier, if you will. In 8th, it's going to be a rough one for the Dill Ducks, but I don't think that's going to stop them having fun. They've got this far, they're in OWCS, give it a crack, why not? Duck tier or not, you can't stop this Philly frothing. Believe me, I've tried. As we move into the rest of the field, I think there's a sort of clear top 4 and then everyone else. So the teams I want to put in this from 5th to 7th are going to be Extinction, Rad, and Supernova. So before we put them in order, we'll talk a little bit about the teams themselves. I think Extinction, aka Avidity, were a team that surpassed my expectations, at least for them last stage. They did much better than I expected. even though there wasn't as much name recognition, I think, on a lot of these players. I think Zomba, Wub, definitely trending up. And I think with the addition of Hitori from Sakura in EMEA Stage 1, this is a great signing for him. I think Hitori is a very good tank. Excited to see her get another opportunity over in North America. I think this is a roster that has that greater than the sum of its parts type feeling to it, and I think Hitori is a great addition, a strong tank, and this will actually mean Extinction are a little bit stronger than they were in Stage 1. So big positive move for them, quite hot on this team overall. If we jump down to Supernova, we'll see maybe even a few more familiar faces for those who remember the fluffy Dreamland team. Obviously, people will know Renko from his time on NLG Shock, the happiest support in the whole land. Likewise, Grapes played for him all of last season as well. Ryan is probably the big name here that a lot of people will be excited to see again. Incredible high talent flex DPS player, super excited. He will be missing the first week or two of the season, which might mean Supernova without their star player will be off to a bit of a slower start. But once he's there, I think this team is going to be really one to keep an eye on. Likewise, Astro, False, expect Astro to play almost all the time. Worth noting Chimer's on the roster too, but Chimer's really emergency backup more than anything. More of a Marvel Rivals player now, even though he probably will have to fill in those first couple of weeks. Then Jutsu is the player who will be starting the hit scan role. I think a good, promising player as well. The DPS line of this Supernova team, I think, is going to be a real high point. But honestly, across the board, Astro's a solid tank. DPS line looks strong. Renko, more than proven at this level. And Grapes, especially on Brig, I think Grapes actually has one of the best Brigs in North America. Even though it's not something we often associate with some of the lower teams in the region, I think he's actually a real standout on that hero. As such, I'm really high on Supernova. The next team is the new Rad Esports, which we only know half of the roster at the moment. Zeb, Peace, and Z. They're going to add another tank to this roster, as well as obviously filling out the DPS and support roles. It's a little bit hard to talk about because I can't talk about the specifics, but for the pieces we do know, I think out of this sort of bottom 4 teams, Z is actually the best flex support there. Very solid, and I think a lot of the additions that people are going to see once they're announced on this roster are going to make people quite high on this roster. For me though, I'm not buying in as much. And this is going to seem crazy. This is going to seem especially crazy when the roster is fully announced. And maybe by the time you're watching this, the roster has been announced. So you know what I'm talking about. But you've got to remember, throughout history, some of the greatest geniuses were regarded as crazy at the time. So you're all going to think I'm crazy for this. And maybe I'm going to get it wrong. It's been known to happen sometimes with my power rankings. But I'm actually going to put Rad down in 7th, which it is the relegation spot. But when I look at these other 2 teams, Extinction, Supernova, I think it's just more high points. I think Extinction have all that success under Avidity to build on with, I think, a much better tank option than they had available previously. Supernova is a team I really like. Again, slow start, etc., but once Ryan's available, firing on all cylinders, I think they can win a lot of these games against the teams around them. So I'm actually going to put Supernova all the way up in 5th, Extinction in this 6th spot, pretty similar to how they ended up finishing last time around. And it's super competitive, this not quite bottom 3, except for the Ducks. I think it's going to be super competitive, which means the relegation scrap in North America could be an absolute dogfight, especially the games when these 3 teams play each other. These are going to be crucial for all of them in terms of who's going to come out on top, who's going to survive, who's going to get through to OWCS Stage 3. This, of course, means there's another tier break, because as much as I think there's a lot of reasons to be positive on a few of these teams, I like some of the signings, I think when we get to the top 4, we're going to see a pretty big goal. A top half, bottom half of the table situation. I'll approach it similar to how I did in EMEA, where we'll talk about all the rosters and all the changes, and then we'll go through and rank the teams. The biggest move out of all of this has to be the transfer of Zera from Nightmare, now ex-Nightmare. Zera's made the move on to Team Liquid, which on the surface, Team Liquid coming into Stage 1 looked like the most stacked roster in North America. Guaranteed to win, some people told you. I don't know who, but some people were definitely saying it. But they finished 3rd. They missed out on that Hangzhou Major spot. So what happens? If you can't beat them, buy them. That's what they say. So they take Zera while he's out of contract after the contracts with Nightmare ended. They signed him to the roster. Zera was undoubtedly a star amongst stars in that Nightmare success over in the Major. A huge signing, great piece of business for Liquid. And you add this into the fact that Team Liquid are going to be pretty upset about Stage 1. They're going to be bitter and determined to find redemption. I think when we saw some of these players, particularly like RuPaul and Vega and the coaching staff on Toronto last year, when they hit some sort of stumbling blocks or results that didn't live up to their expectations, the response was pretty robust in terms of stepping it up. So I'm expecting the same of this Team Liquid version with so many of those coaches and players coming over from there as well. Factor in as well, Knife is going to be on low ping. I don't know how much they're going to use Knife, honestly, with Zera there as well. And Tree also has great flexibility. So I don't know how much use they're going to get out of Knife. But he's going to be there. He's going to be on low ping. And maybe more importantly, the whole team is going to be in the team house, which means all those benefits we talk about when we talk about Virtus Pro and we saw the success they had at EMEA, some of the benefits Gen G are now experiencing by having the facility as well. All of this is going to apply to Team Liquid, and the big difference maker is going to apply to Team Liquid, but it's not really going to apply to any of the others. Now, some of them do share space and practice facilities through collegiate and stuff, but it's not quite the same as having your own team house dedicated to just your team with all your teammates there. Lots of things going in Team Liquid's direction. Zero signing is huge. I'm very, very hot on this team, I think. As much as they missed out in Stage 1, they missed out by just a little, right? It's not like there's now a huge big gulf between SSG and the Burger Boys and Team Liquid. I think they are actually around the same level as both those teams, even though they missed out on an opportunity. There's going to be 3 spots at the Esports World Cup. Absolutely flabbergasted if Liquid managed to miss out on a second major. Team's looking super good. Really excited to see Zera slotted into this lineup. Elsewhere, SSG haven't really made any changes. There's a slight change where Hawk has been replaced by Squid, but Hawk was really an emergency sub on the roster. Squid is going to fill the same mantle here, so don't expect to see too much Squid. Maybe if we end up in a super heavy double flex support meta, it's played everywhere, they will bring in Squid for Bliss at times, but really don't expect to see Squid a lot. For the most part, SSG is still going to function as that 5-man core roster that we saw throughout Stage 1. The positives for SSG compared to Stage 1 is they actually did really fine in Stage 1, so there's no need for dramatic changes. Also, when I spoke to CJ in my interview, that is available on my channel as well, talked about wanting to take this stage a little bit more seriously. Not necessarily the bare minimum effort that is sometimes associated with them, but instead try a little bit harder. I think because of the nightmare result in Hangzhou, it feels like the standard and the expectations have been raised for the entire region a little bit. So SSG, I think, keen not to get left in the dust by any of that. They'll also be aware, of course, that Team Liquid have upgraded massively. The ex-Nightmare core have had all this success. So I think they are right to assess that it does feel like the standard is raising in North America and they need to be careful not to be left behind. Dennis and the Burgers, who very much, I do enjoy the name, but I do expect them to have a new name relatively soon. There has been a lot of org interest in them, so that should be exciting news once everything is signed, sealed, and delivered. Obviously, the big problem for them is replacing Zera. How on earth can you replace Zera? And the answer is, you can't really. The most informed player in the region, outstanding talent. There's no way to replace him directly. And I think if I'm Dennis or one of the Burgers, I can't be thinking like that. You can't find a like-for-like replacement for a player like that in that kind of form. You just have to sign a player you trust, you respect, and you think can make the step up. And even though it's not announced at the time of recording, I think I'm really happy with the choice they've made, and I'm excited to see him slot into the roster. Other than that, the positives are obviously, they looked great. What a performance against Crazy Raccoon. Going to keep talking about it because it's worth repeating. And then they still have Gultak with them, which I think is a huge part that they've been able to hang on to him through all of this sort of roster mania stuff. His reputation is so big now. He's had so much success in Stage 1. I think it's really important, really integral to the team's success that they kept hold of him. So I think they're still going to be very much in and around these top teams. I don't think they're a clear favourite or anything after beating Crazy Raccoon, but they are very much still in the mix, even without Zip. The other roster to talk about is Nightmare. Well, new Nightmare. Old Rad, new Nightmare. It'll get easier, trust me. It'll get easier. We'll get there. Painkiller, Rocket, Chronic, Luke Mino, Lep, Rhino there as well, although Rhino again sits in this position where we don't really expect to see him play all that much, if at all, but I really like his roster. I think Painkiller is a top tank. I don't think he quite showed everyone his full potential in Stage 1. I think there's more to come out of him. Really excited to see him on another good-looking roster. DPS line, Rocket, Chronic. I mean, this seems really good to me. Obviously, Rocket does fall into the category, I think, very much of Tracer level, super high, Doesn't quite have the same peaks on the other heroes, but he's really good on that hero. The type of heroes that Nightmare maybe want to play, leaning into Painkiller's Hazard still where they can, I think suits him quite nicely. Chronic, this guy has crazy aim. His aim is so good. Show me his POV. I'm really excited for this DPS line. Then Luke Mino and Lep seems pretty solid at the back. Luke Mino moving from more of his Violet-esque role back to a true flex support role. Lep will be playing the Lucio, the Brig, what we expect from him. And it seems a pretty good backline, I think. When you compare it to some of the others, I think when we look at these other 3 teams in this top 4, this is where the gap might start to appear in terms of quality and maybe especially in depth of hero as well. We saw Admiral show a lot of flexibility. We know what a good Brig Bliss has on him. And I worry Lep, especially as we get into any of the flex support heroes like a Kiriko or something. I think this is going to be maybe a big problem for Nightmare. I think Nightmare, this type of roster, they have clear strengths for some of their heroes. They need Chronic to be on Hitscan. They need Lep to probably be on Lucio. They need Rocket to be on Tracer. And they need Painkiller to probably be on something like the Hazard. But if they can find a version of that comp that allows people to play their strengths and they can play well, I think we can see upsets. I think they are closer to the top 3 than they are the bottom half of the table. But I also don't expect them to actually be in that top 3. We talk about 3 spots at the Esports World Cup in Stage 2. And I think actually these 3 teams are pretty locked on for it. Nightmare will be the closest challenger, I'm pretty sure of that. But these 3 teams seem pretty locked into it in Team Liquid, SSG, and Dennis and the Burgers. Just makes you smile a little bit every time you say it. So it's actually going to be a sad day when the org is announced because we'll lose the name Dennis and the Burgers. But for now, they are the Burger Boys. Which brings us to the rankings. So maybe I've made it clear already now. I think Nightmare are probably going to end up in this 4th spot. I think that's the easiest one of this top 4 to predict. I think a lot of the things I talked about, the backline gap is going to be a problem for them. Maybe they're going to be a little bit more meta-dependent than some of the teams above them as well. And as much as I do really like Rocket and Chronic as a DPS duo, the problem in North America is look at these other DPS duos. It's Sugar Free and Seeker. It's Zera, Tree and Knife. It's Lethal and to be announced. It's a super high standard in these top 4 DPS. So even the biggest strength of Nightmare, I think, is actually outshone by all the teams above them. So 4th place, don't think that's going to be all that controversial, really. Then we get to the top 3. And the big question to really determine this top 3 is how much of a difference is Zera going to make in terms of improving Liquid or potentially weakening the ex-Nightmare guys? And how does SSG fit into all of this? Do they overtake one of the teams? Do they get overtaken by one of the teams? And I do really believe, much like we talked about in the EMEA power rankings with a top 5 in EMEA, that any of these teams can beat each other. It'll come down to form, it'll come down to meta, it'll come down to performance on the day. It's really true about these 3 teams. They're going to all meet each other relatively early. Like week 1 is going to be an absolute barn burner in terms of some of the top quality fixtures we get. So there's a big gap between those opening games and obviously the actual playoffs now determine everything. So we might not have the clearest view going into playoffs. But I have to make decisions. I have to make choices. So the big question, as I said, how much of a difference will Zera make? And I think a big enough difference that I am actually going to put them first. Obviously, the qualities of Zera speak for themselves. You factor in the team house. You factor in the fact that they're a bit pissed off about how bad they did in Stage 1. There's a fire under their bellies. Is that the saying? Under their bellies? In their bellies? A fire under their feet? A fire under their feet, a fire in their bellies. Either way, there might be both. There's a lot of fire, a lot of motivation for Team Liquid to get redemption. I don't think any of the players will be even remotely happy with missing out on the Hangzhou Major, especially after what a cool event everyone says it is, and especially after Nightmare actually beat Crazy Raccoon. Just a bit of salt in the wound for Liquid, as much as it's nice for the region. I think a lot of these other top teams were, you wish it was you. It's nice for the region, but you wish it was you. And I wouldn't be surprised if Team Liquid feel a bit of that as well. So expect Team Liquid to come back strong in Stage 2. And do expect them to sweep it all. Then we get to SSG, relatively unchanged. Dennis and the Burgers. Dennis and the Burgers working without Zera now. Where do I put these 2 teams? I do think if SSG, they start to put in a bit more work. They ramp up the input. In general, you expect the more work you put in, the better performance you will see. I think I think the nightmare result in the Hangzhou Major served as a bit of a wake-up call for these other top teams in North America to make sure they are raising their game and that they are not getting outshone by, in reality, a lot of the players they passed up on when building their rosters. So I actually expect SSG to come in quite strong from this stage. They still have all the same strength. Sugar-Free still an excellent player. Kellen still the best Winston in the region. Backline is still really good. Maybe there's more pressure on this backline now in terms of RuPaul and Vega, very established talent. UV and Admiral are in outrageously good form, had such a good stage one, such a good major. So that's probably the biggest concern for SSG there. But still a lot of faith in SSG. I think they will finish second. So maybe this comes in as a bit of a hot take that they can beat Crazy Raccoon, but now they're the third best team in the region. I still think this is super tight, right? All of these top three really could finish in any order. But my instinct, my gut, is we're going to see Team Liquid, SSG rise to the top and Dennis and the Burgers. As much as it was a magical night in Hangzhou, I don't know if they're going to be able to continue that success to the same level. I think they'll still be good. I think they'll still be competitive, but not the same level. Expecting Team Liquid and SSG to gain that top 2 spot. All right. So I know this one was a little bit shorter than some of my other ones. I'm recording this one a bit later in the day because I'm trying to fit it all in because I'm away at the weekend, etc., etc. But hopefully everyone's happy with my power rankings. Well, maybe not everyone. I'm happy with my power rankings, which is the important thing. Happy with my tier breaks. Maybe a few hot takes in here in terms of some of the teams I expect to maybe finish a bit lower than other people would. Maybe Rad and even Dennis and the Burgers are probably lower than a lot of people would put them. But those are my power rankings. I'm sticking to them. I've never been wrong before. Not once. So this is going to be locked in. I'm confirming them. If you want to submit your own power rankings in the comments, feel free to do so. If you think I've missed anything, if there's anything I'm overvaluing, undervaluing, let me know as well. Have a discussion. And let's enjoy the first week of OWCS. I'm going to miss the action live, but I will be back catching up immediately afterwards, probably on the Tuesday, and then live coverage throughout a lot of Stage 2 as well. So stay tuned for all of that. I'm excited to watch it all, see how it all unfolds, and see who gets his spot at the Esports World Cup.